Okay, you guys ready? I'll start the broadcast.
We're ready.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I think we've got a few joiners. Kevna, I can see you there. Pooja, Augustine. I think we're just waiting for a few more, and then I'll start the session. Let's put a slide up. Kevna, yeah, I can see. Hello. So I think we're waiting for a few more joiners. Pooja, Augustine, do you want to let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay? Great stuff. I think we've got a couple more joiners. So hi, David. Hi, Norbert. Good to have you on board. Glad you could make it. I've got you on mute for the time being, but feel free to just drop anything into the chat if you want to say hello or got any questions or anything you'd like me to cover. I'll give it a few more minutes. I'll start at 5 past. I think we've got just a couple more. I think we're planning on joining, so we'll see if they're able to attend, and then we'll start at 5 past regardless. Okay. Nearly 5 past. I think that's more or less everyone. Okay, yeah, let's get started then. So thank you for coming along. I hope this is a good use of your lunchtime. My name's James. I'm the channel sales manager here at MailStore, and I'm running this particular session we're doing in conjunction with our long-term distribution partners, C&C in Canada. So we've got a mix today of some CNC partners, some direct partners with us, and in Canada and Latin America. So there's a good mix there. And interestingly, I saw there's quite a melting pot of email services and platforms being used as well. I think everything was covered evenly, pretty much. IMAP, Exchange, 365, MDemon, Kerio, I think I saw in there. So yeah, quite an interesting mix. I'll try and bear that in mind as I go through. Okay. Just a couple of housekeeping points. There will be a recording, so I'll make sure you get that. I'd like to try and keep this interactive if possible. I'll keep an eye on the questions. I've got my colleague in the technical team, Dave Warren, is on hand as well. So if you've got any questions, he can field those too while I'm chatting. But I'm happy to stop if there's a point you'd like to talk about in a bit more detail. Just let me know. And in terms of the duration, I think we're at about half an hour, and then we can do some questions afterwards. I'll just unmute the microphone, and you can by all means just. In fact, I'll tell you what, seeing as we're a relatively small group, I will unmute the mics, and you can just, if you want to butt in, feel free. You have to just unmute yourself and drop a question in. I think that should work. If it doesn't, just type. Okay. So just to give you an idea of what we'll cover, a bit of background about email, the problems your customers are likely to face when it comes to email, the solution in MailStore, and then a little bit about how to talk to customers about MailStore, their objections, and some basics on the licensing model. So it's quite a high level sales overview, this one. I'll be doing some more detailed sessions on 365 and some other areas, but this one is it's a nice introduction to it, hopefully. So the customers you're working with at the moment have basically more ways than ever before to communicate, and I think I probably use most of them. You've got Teams, Slack, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Facebook Messenger, and pretty much kind of spoilt for choice, really. But despite there being a lot of talk, particularly a couple of years ago, about email replacements and what's the next big thing, it's still king. It's still the most widely used messaging medium for business. So a little stat for you. Everyone likes a stat. 281 billion emails are sent each day. That's a lot of email. And it's just an indication of what the customers you work with are facing in terms of the challenge to kind of store that in a in an efficient, kind of secure way. Interestingly, and it's a little bit scary, I suppose, is that from a technical perspective, email was never really designed to be used as we're using it today. So in an ideal world, you'd probably have, a CRM, a secure intranet, secure messaging solutions, and you'd at least have, everyone saving attachments to network locations reliably. But basically, the accessibility and convenience we've got with email means that it gets used for everything. So, I mean, I just put a few examples up here of, what you'll find in an average mailbox, but it's not uncommon for me to speak to customers who use email for the full purchase process. They'll get a customer will inquire via the website or phone. They'll send out, they'll get a request for information. They'll send, send a quote. Then there'll be invoices going backwards and forwards. Even negotiation happening via email. It all happens. So. And of course, we're communicating with suppliers, recruitment companies. There's a lot of, there's obviously the communication that happens internally is also there. And personally, I'm not a fan in sort of eavesdropping, and I think it's important that you have a workforce you could trust. But as a business owner, it's really important that you've got access, if you need it, to the communications that have been going on in your business, because they can be key when it comes to if there's a dispute over some abuse or bullying in the workplace. It's becoming more common, and it's those kind of things that you need to cover off, and critical information is in the mailboxes. The other thing is we're sending important documents backwards and forwards that contain information that would give someone a competitive advantage. So it's a proper melting pot at the moment in our mailboxes. There's lots of information in there that really needs to be kept securely and taken seriously. So there's lots of problems that can be associated with this amount of email and that amount of sensitive email. but I've kind of distilled it down to three kind of key areas. So the first one is when you need it, email's not there. So you need a contract. A customer says they ordered a red door when it was actually a blue door. You need to prove. Basically, you need that email there to prove that that was a conversation that was had. You may well lose email through accidental deletion. So we call them fat thumbers. So you basically, someone who's just literally just deleted a message by accident, been a bit overzealous with the mailbox clear up. You've then got the more sinister side, which is, employees that just blat their mailboxes when they receive a notice and they have to leave the company, or they're covering up something else. This one is a little bit more sensitive because it's about administrators, but the administrator errors, are quite common, even though it's you guys that are perhaps in that role. Particularly with 365, there's policies that can be applied incorrectly. Exchange migrations can go wrong. There can be all sorts of issues with upgrades and things. So there's a lot of, responsibility on the administrator. And that can lead to lost email, as can ransomware. Email is definitely still susceptible to ransomware attacks. And of course, when you've got lots of email and customers or end users are trying to deal with that, they find their own ways, and that can often be exporting to an Outlook archive, a PST as they're known, and they're just pretty horrible, really. They can be, they often sit on laptops not being backed up. They're renowned for becoming corrupt, so it's possible you can lose email that way. Another really pertinent point, excuse me a second. And can everyone hear me okay? I'll just keep an eye on the chat, make sure I'm not just rabbiting to myself. Another really, really pertinent point is 365. So we'll do some more on this another time, but just so you know, this is publicly available information from Microsoft. They have a shared responsibility model when it comes to their cloud services. So basically, they back up the infrastructure using their own kind of replication-based backup, but that's only there for disaster recovery purposes. So Microsoft specifically recommend that you as an end user using 365 should be making your own provisions for backups that will allow you to restore messages and mailboxes. So that's not covered, and it's something that there's quite a lot of news quite a lot of coverage in the IT press, but it's still not common knowledge among businesses themselves. So there needs to be something in place, whether it's backup or archiving. So that's a really important point, and as I say, one we'll do a bit more detail on another time. So when you think of email archiving, it's quite possible that you just think, right, well, that's for legal and financial companies, but that's not necessarily always the case. It is true, but there are litigation and legal issues that will face pretty much any business that's been in operation for a reasonable amount of time. Will come across at some point a dispute with a customer, an employee, or a supplier. And I mean, the sum total of this slide is pretty much, if you don't have a reliable record of email that you can trust, that hasn't been tampered with, that an employee can't have messed with, deleted, you are leaving yourself exposed. I'll be honest, I'm not an expert in the Canadian and Latin American kind of regulations, but one that popped up was PIPEDA, which I believe is law concerning data privacy from sort of 2000. Basically means you need to be able to provide personal information to customers quickly and easily. And there's a GDPR equivalent, I understand, that came into force last year, I think, the LGPD in Latin America. And essentially that's all around the same thing. You need to take the information that you're keeping, take that responsibility seriously, make sure it's secure and that you can provide it if required, in a usable format, and delete it if you shouldn't have it. So all these things you need to be covering yourself against. Last but not least is the issue of overloaded mailboxes. So it tends to be the senior management, and we're all guilty of it occasionally, I know, but keeping massive amounts of mail that's not needed, really, just in case, having endless folders nested within folders. Large mailboxes are bad for Outlook performance for servers if you're using an on-premise solution. So that is a really big issue that can affect, it can cost you because you need to upgrade hardware prematurely. It can impact on productivity because your staff are spending ages waiting for Outlook to load and for searches to be performed. And as a rule of thumb, Outlook and clients run much quicker when there's less email in them. So it's an issue, this issue of hoarding, as we call it. So what's the solution? You'll be shocked and stunned to hear it's MailStore. Just to give you an overview, this is MailStore Server. We also do a multi-tenant version called the Service Provider Edition, and that is one you can install on your own infrastructure and sell per month, per user. But this is the on-premise version I'm talking to you about today, and this is a software solution for Windows servers. So you can install it locally. You can maybe put it on a AWS or Azure machine. And essentially there's low hardware requirements. It's very easy to use. And because there is a perpetual license, so you pay up front and then it's a small percentage of the new price in the second year. It's very cost effective as well. So that is MailStore Server as an overview. And the key selling point around MailStore is that it's an independent store of all your email, wherever it lives. So you can pull in email from Exchange, 365, the G Suite. As you can see, MDM is on the list there. You can upload PST files. And I saw one of the partners from Brazil mention IMAP was sort of the solution of choice for his customers. You can pull in the mail there. So you've always got an independent copy that sits external to the service. So it's, not only is it hopefully isolated from any issues that you might experience on that platform, but also it's quite portable as well. So it's, I'll touch on that in a bit more detail later on. Are we all good? I feel like I'm talking at everyone. I don't know if everyone can hear me okay and following all right. Am I bashing through it too quickly, or is there any questions so far? I'll grab a drink and keep an eye on the chat. Okay. So a nice point to move on to then is let's actually see what MailStore is. So for an end user, this is what they pretty much see. So there's different ways you can access MailStore. This is the Outlook add-in. So you can see there you've got an additional ribbon has appeared in Outlook. So that search field on the top left is new, and that's a MailStore component. And you basically sort of disregard the Outlook search and use this from this point forward. I was just going to say there's a web version, so you can just use it in a browser, which is responsive, so it looks fine on mobile devices. It resizes and gives you a little burger menu and stuff, so it's definitely accessible for mobile devices. And there's a desktop version as well. So yeah, basically when you've got this installed, as you can see, if you put any search term into the search box there, that is searching email that could have come in 2-3 minutes ago. It could be 10 years old, and it's something that people often overlook. They think archiving is just somewhere you go for old email. Well, with MailStore, this just becomes your environment. This is where you search for messages. You can see you never have to leave Outlook, which is really nice because, particularly when you've got companies with people resistant to change, shall I say, they don't want to have to adapt to a new solution. So this is, it's very similar to what they'd experience if it was just natively in Outlook. So you can see they can hit the Browse Archive button, if you can see that up there. And that gives you the folder structure as well, if you've configured MailStore in that way. And then you've got the option to, obviously you can view the message in its full glory. You can open it and restore it back to wherever you like, either the mailbox in a particular folder or another location. So, and if you want to go to a more advanced view, we do have one. So if you have, so that search will search through, attachments, email bodies, subject lines, all that sort of stuff, as you'd expect. And then the advanced one lets you drill down a bit further. So you can be a bit more specific about what you're searching. And you can also, quite a nice feature of this is you can specify, if you've been set up in this way, that you can look across other people's email as well. So let's say you work in a sales team or you're a sales manager and you want to see what everyone's, what communications have gone backwards and forwards. You can set it up so that when you perform that search, it just looks across everyone else's email as well, and you can be granular with that. You can create saved searches for common searches, and yeah, we've got a nice video on the more sort of advanced requirements, advanced capabilities there. But key is that you do all this yourself. So unlike some alternative solutions, it's totally self-service. So, you need to find email about a particular topic, you can do it yourself straight away. Okay, so Dave, our technical guy, probably going to laugh at this because this is a super simplified version of what happens in my mind when you set up MailStore, but I like to think of it this way. It's 3 main steps. So they're slightly different depending on Exchange or 365 or IMAP, but essentially you need to think of it as you create your users, so it will synchronize with Active Directory. You connect to, if it's 365, you can do that if you're still using AD, or you can connect via impersonation rights, and basically you're setting up whatever users you've got, they get set up in MailStore. And if you create a group, it'll automatically maintain those as well, so you don't have to worry about managing users in MailStore. As you add them on the Exchange or hosted Exchange tenant, they just get added automatically. So once you've got your users there, you simply import the historic mail, so you connect to the mailboxes and you pull in everything that's there. And at this point, you also bring in the sort of the PST archives. So basically, because those users are set up, say you had a big bunch of PSTs from the business, you could upload them together, and they'd then be made available to the relevant users. So once you've got all your existing email into MailStore, you then set up. We normally recommend anyway that you set up journaling. So in Exchange, it's basically just a mailbox that you create. It's a journaling mailbox, and that takes a copy of everything that comes and goes from the mail server, whether it's external or internal or whatever. And MailStore is continually polling that, so it takes a copy of it. With Office 365, it simply gets you to, it's journaling still, but it forwards journaled email to another email address. And that email address is MailStore effectively. It uses a gateway, but it's MailStore. So yeah, from that point onwards, everything that comes and goes from your mail platform, and this includes MDaemon, and you can do something similar with hosted accounts. Everything that comes and goes is there. There's been no opportunity for a user to tamper with it, delete it, edit it in any way. So you've got a perfect record. And what that means is, you can then choose a retention policy. So you're free to choose how much mail you actually want in your mailbox itself, because it's all available, as you've seen, through the Outlook add-in. So you don't necessarily need it all sat there clogging up the server or or reaching your, clogging up your mailbox quotas and stuff. So you can choose a policy. And, I ran a former business on a policy of 3 months. So I only had 3 months worth of mail in the mailbox itself, and that worked just great. That's quite drastic. You might have to talk to your potential clients about that. But as you can see, a huge space saving. If you've got 10 years worth of mail and you suddenly bring it down to whatever, 6 months, 12 months, you can imagine the kind of space savings. Well, actually, you don't have to imagine it because there's a picture of it. So there's a data volume. Essentially, what it's saying is you had loads of email in your mailboxes and you don't anymore. And the beauty as well is that once that email goes into the archive, the messages are deduplicated, the attachments are compressed, and you actually get, on average, a 70% space saving in terms of what space is actually needed then to store that email in MailStore. So it's a huge saving, which you can imagine is a big help if you're doing any sort of backup jobs. Well, obviously you need to pay for storage normally, so that's that's a big help to just be working with less email. I'm just checking the chat and I can see. Okay, some of my clients said they can't find the MailStore add-in in Outlook. Okay. I can look at that with you separately. That is it's a separate installer, so you would need to install that individually. We can definitely have a look at that. Dave, I don't know if you can maybe just drop a line in there, perhaps about maybe there's some instructions on that. If not, I can follow up afterwards. But yes, it should definitely be there, provided you're using a supported version of Outlook, which is pretty much all of them. So thanks for that, Augustine. We'll follow up with you. And another key advantage of MailStore is that it's, I mentioned the independence thing, but you can actually export as well. So there's actually nothing really, they say MailStore is no one-way street, as we say it in the marketing department. Basically, you can get mail, you can move away from MailStore and you can, pretty easily, and you can export to usable formats, PST, whatever. So it's very flexible in terms of what it imports, and it's got a whole load of options in terms of what it exports. So it's very flexible in that sense. And that leads me on to this, which I hope you guys are aware of. This has just been bumped on actually, but in January 2020, Microsoft have scheduled a whole load of end of support dates, and it's Windows 7, Server 2008. And the one we're really concerned with is Exchange 2010. They've actually bumped that on now till October 2020. But essentially, the reason I'm showing you this is there's going to be a whole load of customers that are on Exchange and thinking, okay, I've got to do something post-Exchange. Do I upgrade to a massive server, or do I go to 365? What do I do? What's the best option? Obviously, there's an opportunity there for you to advise and hopefully, with a bit of luck, get some business from those conversations. But in terms of MailStore, it performs a really handy role because it connects to Exchange. It does this whole archiving thing and then slimming down. Basically, once you've got all the mail in the archive, you can slim down the mailboxes. But also, if you reconnect it then to 365, so you go from 2010 to 365, you can choose how much you want to put back into 365. It's all there anyway. It's all accessible. So you might save yourself an awful lot of time in terms of what you need to move. And then, of course, there's a whole load of benefits for having archiving with 365 anyway. It's a really good pairing. So, that's definitely something to be aware of. There'll be movement in the market, and I'd definitely be talking to your customers about what they're doing, whether it's with a MailStore head-on or otherwise. So keep an eye on that, and we'll do some materials on it as well. We'll try and do some more campaign stuff on that. Just a quick look at the litigation and legal features. If I was delivering this in another region, there'd probably be a lot of focus on the legal features, but compliance isn't always the main driver for sales. It's not, certainly in some of the markets I work with, it's not that. It's what I've talked about already. But there are some great sort of legally focused features. One of the ones I'd like to draw to your attention that's really important is the auditor access and the auditing of the audit logs. So you can see basically whoever's logged into MailStore and the actions they've performed. So it's very important, that given that you're protecting your mail, that you can see what's going on. So that's quite an important one. There's retention policies, so you can delete mail after a certain period, which is required for certain requirements like GDPR over here, and I guess probably LGPD requires the same. Don't keep email for longer than you need to, because there's personal stuff in there. And there's sort of dedicated auditor access with appropriate rights. Okay. That was a whistle-stop tour of kind of what MailStore is and how it's useful. Are there any other questions at this point? go to webinars, not making it easy for me to see your questions, but okay. Dave, I might need a little bit of help on that one because I can't quite see. I can't quite see the chat properly. So I'm just going to move into the sort of the more kind of sort of how to sell MailStore section. So let's have a quick look at who's buying. I did some analysis with my colleagues at Zen Software. They're the UK distributor, and I did something similar in the Benelux region, and the findings are quite similar actually. So you might well think, well, archiving, right, legal and financial firms, that's who it's for, they're the main ones. And you can see there financial services is the top performing one. So this is basically, I looked at the number of units sold, new units sold, and the percentage that belong to the different sectors. And financial services was the most popular. That wasn't the case in the Benelux. But the other probably 5 or 6 below it are all worth paying attention to. They all represent a big, a large number of sales. And particularly logistics in the Benelux, but manufacturing, construction, distribution, they have things in common, and they tend to be that certainly for for logistics, there's loads of stakeholders involved. So, we're talking about, delivery companies here, transportation, shipment projects. So there's lots of stakeholders. Everyone needs to know what's going on. They need to have a record for accountability purposes because they're often short-term contracts, Manufacturing, again, can be, there can be a lot of people involved in that kind of loop. There can be drawings going backwards and forwards, lots of POs, back and forth on, all sorts of projects. Drawings, obviously, large attachments that quickly fill up mailboxes. And then things like construction, again, similar thing applies, architecture, I drop into that. And that includes, again, lots of large attachments. There is a requirement there in the UK, at least, to keep email for 7 years for insurance purposes. And again, distribution, it's an interesting one. I didn't really expect to see that, but distribution could be a distribution of pretty much anything really, but distribution companies. There was all sorts of, whether it was clothing, I think there was the one that was like soft toys, and then there was pipes, electrical goods, just distribution as a sector, because of the way they work, because of that accountability and need for an audit trail. Yeah, they're all good reasons to use archiving. So if you've got companies that are in these sectors, I would, and certainly if you're a specialist in one of these, I'd definitely recommend honing in on that. And if you've got some good prospects, talk to them about how they're using email. Hopefully you're doing that anyway if you're their support company, but yeah, give it a little bit more attention. And if you need any dedicated materials focused on those areas, just give myself or CNC a shout if they're your distributor. Okay, I'll have a quick look at objections then. So you get that a lot. We're too small. We don't need archiving. Well, as I've already suggested, every business can benefit from archiving. Every business needs to cover themselves against the kind of issues that that can arise from litigation. And of course, regardless of the size of company you are, productivity is important. If you've got if you've got a process that means you can't find email quickly, and it's either Outlook sluggish or it just takes a long time to search for things because you're just using the native Outlook search, which is not amazing. Then it's a good reason for any business to use it, not just the large ones. It's not within our budget. There's cost savings in terms of, think of the potential implications for a legal case, could just skyrocket. And of course, if you're using on-site hardware, then there's a strong argument for this might delay a hardware upgrade or something of that nature. And also, it is very cost effective. If you look at the pricing shortly, the ongoing costs are pretty low. So I'd point those things out. our mail server already has an integrated archiving feature. You might come across this when you're talking to customers that are using Office 365, because it is definitely worthy of a whole session on its own, but the native features in 365 mean that there's still an opportunity there to permanently lose email. And if you go for the additional premium features, then it's the recovery process. First of all, it requires an administrator. So if you want an old email back, an administrator is needed, and you have to give them your requirements, have them have the appropriate permissions set up. They have to access the compliance center. They have to run the query. They have to export that email to PST. They then have to provide that to the user, who then attaches it in Outlook again, checks to see if they've got what they need. If they have, great. If they haven't, back to the admin again, and backwards and forwards. And it's great set of features, great products for larger companies, I'd say, but for certainly for the smaller ones, that isn't ideal, I would say. So if it's 365, then that'll be my point on that. We've got some more content coming on that. That's why I'm going around the edges, because we need to get all that stuff verified. But we'll do a separate session on it. And obviously, if you're using an integrated archiving feature, I know MDemon will let you do some basic archiving. You could just archive to a journaling account in Exchange. That's not getting the mail off the server, and it's increasing the workload of it, and it's probably pretty horrible to search as well. So we've already got a backup solution. You'll come across this a lot. People still, 10 years on, I've been doing this for 10 years now, there's still the same the same misconceptions around, archiving is just backup, or I don't need archiving because I've got backup. I'll just flick to the next slide, actually. There are key differences. They're very different things, although there is crossover. We recommend that you have both. So if you're a 365 customer, I'd want a third-party backup solution for Teams, SharePoint, and so on. But definitely, anyway, for on-premise solutions, you should have a backup solution in place. And the reason you want to use archiving is, well, it gives you access yourself. So as I've showed you, you can get access to the archive, self-service. So there's no administrator required. That's quite a big deal if you just want to get messages back from a backup. They're not designed for that. It's for DR, basically, disaster recovery. Archiving lets you meet those compliance needs if they apply. But the main thing is it's keeping a complete record of your email. So if you're doing backups periodically, there's always a window you could lose something. Whereas with archiving, it's continually taking a copy, so there's no opportunity there for anything to get messed with, tampered with. Archiving reduces the mailbox load. Gets it pretty much. You think of it as unlimited mailbox, so you can just pretty much it automatically maintains your mailbox level, and as far as you're concerned, you can keep as much email as you like. And of course, it gets rid of those horrible PST files, which backup doesn't do. It doesn't make them available to you anyway. Obviously, you can back them up. Okay. So onto licensing. I'm just going to make a quick change. Dave, I just got your message. I'm going to make you an organizer so you can help out there. Terrific. That's done. So a quick look at licensing then. Okay, so actually this is the US dollar pricing. Obviously we've got a mix of people in today, so you can check this on the website. CNC have their own price list, but obviously it's the same. If you're a reseller, of course, you get a discount on the RRPs. But just to give you an indication, this is how the licensing works. It starts at 5 users. If you want to, you have to have a minimum of 5. If you want to add any users, you have to add 5 every time, a minimum of 5. So you can have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever you like. And if you come back, you have to add 5, and then it's individual increments after that. So minimum of 5, and in the second year, it's around about 23% of the new price if you don't let it expire. So when you buy it new, you get 12 months of cover, which is upgrade cover and support. And that varies depending on where you buy it from. But if you we have 2 levels of support at MailStore, with and without telephone support, basically. But yeah, you get 12 months as standard, and then you've got an option to renew it. If you let it expire and go out of the grace period that we give you, then it becomes 70% of the new price to bring back in. And if it's expired, you can't add users. So it's worth bearing that in mind. Okay, I'm just checking everything's all right in the chat. Okay, yeah, so as I said, you can find the pricing on our website. Obviously, as I said, CNC, we're running this with CNC. This is a standard slide, so I don't expect you to buy it from us. Please, please talk to them if you're in the region and want to work with those guys. I think I've covered this actually. This is fairly standard. Charities get a 20% discount, as do schools. And if you come up against a competing archive solution, there's a 50% discount for first-time customers if you can provide a proof of purchase and it meets the requirements we set out. Like, I think it has to have valid cover. So basically, it's a current product. It can't have expired any more than 6 months ago. Has to have been a proper archiving solution, not some sort of weird add-on. So yeah, keep that in mind. If you want to displace any archiving solutions you're not happy with, then we can talk to you about that. And in terms of sort of pitching MailStore, you've got the trial, which is very powerful indeed. Normally, there's a particular requirement that will that will sort of generate interest in archiving, whether it's overloaded mailboxes or whatever. But once people get to use the trial, that's really powerful because it's such a nice product to use. It's very difficult to go back once you're used to searching with MailStore. Partners get a free not for resale license. So that's a 25 user license. If you haven't got one of those, definitely get one. You can get it and link it up to 365 very quickly and be archiving literally in minutes. It's really straightforward. And it's good to be using it yourself if you're supporting it for customers. We do an MCAS certification. You may have seen in the communications we sent out about this webinar. We're actually running a boot camp on the 17th of October, I think it is. We'll let you know about that anyway. But basically, we're running a 1 hour session where we get pretty technical and we're looking to MailStore in a lot of depth and basically get you up to speed, ready for the certification. And that makes you a certified archiving specialist. Great for bringing your knowledge up to date, spotting sales opportunities. And of course, it does also, it depends on the requirements of the different partner programs, but it does also give you other benefits. I'll leave it at that for now. And yeah, so if you're a MailStore partner, get your logo on your site and talk to people about that competitive upgrade offer. In terms of the help we can provide, we're more than happy to, if you've got a group of customers and you say, oh, actually, I've got a load of logistics customers, even 2, 3, or larger prospects that make it worth doing, then we're happy to run webinars, and we can do that in conjunction with you and CNC if you're part of their program. There's lots of materials in our partner portal, and they're also available through CNC. Brochures, videos, standard decks, all that kind of stuff you'd expect, really. But we can also help you with any sort of custom materials if you've got anything you need. So, but yeah, webinars are a nice, powerful way of making a personal connection. If you want us to run something that's end user focused and do it with you, then that's something we'd be happy to talk about anyway. And just a final shout. Now, we're not running, this isn't for direct resellers, but CNC in Canada, I've got this promotion going. It's take 2. So effectively, if you sell 2 new MailStore licenses within the next 2 months, starting the 1st of October, you get a $75 Canadian dollar Amazon voucher. So really sorry for you guys in Latin America. We're trying to sort something out for you direct as well. But for the moment, this is a via distributor only offer. So that's there if you're interested and want some guilt-free spending on Amazon for stuff you don't really need. Then that's there as an option. Okay. I think that's more or less it. I've only put my email address on there. There's Joan and CNC are obviously available as well. I hope you found that useful. I'll be really interested to know what you thought of it, whether it was if you got any feedback on it, just in terms of whether it was content that's actually useful for you, or whether you wanted a bit more depth in areas, or wished it was only 3 minutes long. I don't know.
Thanks very much, James. That was excellent. This is Joan from CNC.
Hey.
I just wanted to let you know that anybody that was looking for the free NFR, you can just email me at reseller@ccsoftware.ca, and I'll get that hooked up for you.
Terrific. That's great. I should have put that on there, actually, Joan. Sorry about that, but yeah, that's great that you provided it anyway. Yeah, the NFR is a bit of a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, and any of the other questions, actually, or questions about the promo that we're running, same address.
Excellent stuff. And then, so on the 17th, we've got, I think Dave's delivering the boot camp, so that should be fun. I'm going to come along, see if I can learn something. I think it's probably going to be fairly in depth. That's basically the training we give to new distributors, so it's pretty full on, but it's only a 60-minute session, so that's a nice, hopefully a fun way to improve your knowledge on MailStore. Have I covered off all the questions? This GoToWebinar view is pretty horrible. I can't quite see everything. I think I'll take it that I have, and I'll check afterwards, check the logs and stuff, and make sure if there's anything that needs following up, I follow up, and I'll also send a follow-up to everyone that's joined. So if that's everything, I'll leave it there, and hope to see you in a session another time soon. And yeah, have a great day. Thanks for joining me, Dave, Joan.
Thanks, James.
Excellent. I'll end it there.
And thanks, everyone, for joining.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care.
Adios.